International Convention for the Safety of Life at Sea, SOLAS 1974 gets started. Here is our group members Adeline, Arnie, Fatima, Shafika and what?
Facts of framework. Main objective of the SOLAS Convention are to specify minimum standards for the construction, equipment and operation of ships compatible with their safety. Flag states are responsible for ensuring that ships under their flag comply with its requirements, and several certificates are prescribed in the convention as proof that this has been done. Based on Article 1, general obligations under the convention, the contracting governments undertake to promulgate all laws, decrees, orders and regulations and to take all other steps which may be necessary to give the present convention full and complete effect, so as to ensure that from the point of view safety of life, a ship is fit for the service for which it is intended. Next, the development entry into the force. The concerns that have been arise is to ensure ship is fit for the service for which it was designed from the aspect of life safety. Next, to ensure safety of passengers at sea and safety in navigation. Last, establishing agreement uniform principles and rules directed in common. Article 2 state that the present convention applies to ships flying the flags of contracting governments. Next, in Article 3, laws, regulation where the contracting government agree to interact with the Secretary General of the Intergovernmental Maritime Consultative Organization, or known as IMO, and deposit document with a list of non-governmental agencies which are authorized to act in their behalf in the administration of measures for safety of life at sea for circulation to the contracting governments for the information of their officers. The text of laws, decrees, orders and regulations which shall have been promulgated on the various matters within the scope of the present convention. A sufficient number of specimens of their certificates issued under the provisions of the present convention for circulation to the contracting governments for the information of their officers.
In Article 4,
cases of force majeure, a ship which is not subject to the provisions of the present convention at the time of its departure on any voyage shall not become subject to the provision of the present convention on account of any deviation from its intended voyage due to stress of weather or any other cause of force majeure.
In Article 5, carriage of persons in emergency for the purpose of evacuating persons in order to avoid a threat to the security of their lives, a contracting government may permit the carriage of a larger number of persons in its ships than is otherwise permissible under the present convention. Such permission shall not deprive other contracting governments of any right of control under the present convention over such ships which come within their ports. Notice of any such permission together with a statement of the circumstances shall be sent to the Secretary General of the organization by the contracting government granting such permission.
Article 6. Prior treaties and convention. A. As between the contracting government, the present convention replaces and abrogates the International Convention for the Safety of Life at Sea, which was signed in London on 17 June 1960. B. All other treaties, conventions and arrangements relating to safety of life at sea or matters pertaining thereto at present in force between governments parties to the present convention shall continue to have full and complete effect during the terms thereof as regard: first, ships to which present convention does not apply, and ships to which the present convention applies in respect of matters for which it has not expressly provided. C. To the extent, however, that such treaties, conventions or arrangements conflicts with the provision of the present convention, the provisions of the present convention shall prevail. D. All matters which are not expressly provided for in the present convention remain subject to the legislation of the contracting governments. Article 7. Special rules drawn up by agreements. When in accordance with the present convention, special rules are drawn up by agreements between all or some of the contracting governments. Such rules shall be communicated to the Secretary General of the organization for circulation to all contracting governments. Article 8. Amendments. A. The present convention may be amended by either of the procedures specified in the following paragraph. B. Amendments after consideration within the organization. C. Amendments by a conference. D. First, a contracting government which has accepted an amendment to the annex which has entered into force shall not be obliged to extend the benefits of the present convention in respect of the certificates issued to a ship entitled to fly the flag of a state, the government of which, pursuant to the provision of subparagraph of the article, has objected to the amendment and has not withdrawn such an objection, but only to the extent that such certificates relate to matters covered by the amendments in question. Second, a contracting government which has accepted an amendment to the annex which has entered into force shall extend the benefits of the present convention in respect of the certificates issued to a ship entitled to fly the flag of a state, the government of which, pursuant to the provision of subparagraph of the article, has notified the Secretary General of the organization that is exempt itself from giving effect to the amendments. E. Unless expressly provided otherwise, any amendments to the present convention made under this article which relates to the structure of a ship shall apply only to ships the keels of which are laid or which are at similar stage of construction on or after the date on which the amendments enters into force. F. Any declaration of acceptance of or objection to an amendment or any notice given under subparagraph B7 paragraph 2 of this article shall be submitted in writing to the Secretary General of the organization, who shall inform all contracting governments of any such submission and the date of its receipt. G. The Secretary General of the organization shall inform all contracting governments of any amendments which enter into force under this article, together with the date on which each such amendment enters into force. Article 11. Denunciation. A. The present convention may be denounced by any contracting government at any time after the expiry of 5 years from the date on which the convention enters into force for that government. B. Denunciations shall be effected by the deposit of an instrument of denunciation with the Secretary General of the organization, who shall notify all the other contracting governments of any instrument of denunciations received and of the date of its receipt, as well as the date on which such denunciation takes effect. C. A denunciation shall take effect 1 year or such longer period as may be specified in the instruments of denunciations after its receipt by the Secretary General of the organization. Article 10. Entry into force. A. The present convention shall enter into force 12 months after the date on which not less than 25 states, the combined merchant fleets of which constitute not less than 50% of the gross tonnage of the world's merchant shipping, have become parties to it in accordance with Article 9. B. Any instruments of ratification, acceptance, approval, or accession deposited after the date on which the present convention enters into force shall take effect 3 months after the date of deposit. C. After the date on which an amendment to the present convention is deemed to have been accepted under Article 8. Any instruments of ratification, acceptance, approval, or accession shall apply to the convention as amended. Article 11. Denunciation. A. The present convention may be denounced by any contracting governments at any time after the expiry of 5 years from the date on which the convention enters into force for that government. B. Denunciations shall be effected by the deposit of an instrument of denunciation with the Secretary General of the organization, who shall notify all the other contracting governments of any instruments of denunciations received and of the date of its receipt, as well as the date on which such denunciation takes effect. C. A denunciation shall take effect 1 year or such longer period as may be specified in the instruments of denunciations after its receipt by the Secretary General of the organization. Article 12. Deposits and registration. A. The present convention shall be deposited with the Secretary General of the organization, who shall transmit certified true copies thereof to the governments of all states which have signed to the present convention or acceded to it. B. As soon as the present convention enters into force, the text shall be transmitted by the Secretary General of the organization to the Secretary General of the United Nations for registration and publication in accordance with Article 102 of the Charter of the United Nations. Article 13. Languages. The present convention is established in a single copy in the Chinese, English, French, Russian, and Spanish language, each text being equally authentic. Official translation in the Arabic, German, and Italian languages shall be prepared and deposited with the signed original, in witness whereof the undersigned, being duly authorized by their respective governments for that purpose, have signed the present convention.
So next we go on to the arguments, which is the party that initiates the legal framework. First, we will look at the origin and early versions, which in response to the sinking of Titanic in 1914, the first version of the SOLAS Treaty was established, which stipulated the quantity of lifeboats and other emergency equipment, as well as safety procedures such as continuous radio watches. Due to advent of the First World War, the agreement of 1914 was never implemented. The second treaty in 1929 was followed by the third in 1948 and finally the fourth in 1960. Under SOLAS 1960, it could take several years to amendments to come into force since countries had to give notice of acceptance to International Maritime Organization, which is IMO, and there was a minimum threshold of countries and tonnage. But we just jump into the 1974 version, which is the current one, and a completely new convention was adopted to allow SOLAS to be updated and implemented within a reasonable timescale. The previous procedure to incorporate amendments, which proved to be very slow. Amendments enter into force via a tacit acceptance procedure, which this allows an amendment to enter into force on a specified date unless objections to an amendment are received from an agreed number of parties. The 1974 SOLAS Convention entered into force on May 25, 1980. And 12 months after it was ratified by at least 25 countries, accounting for at least 50% of global gross tonnage. Since then, it has been modified and amended multiple times, and the current version is commonly referred to as SOLAS 1974 as amended.
Next, requirements of the framework safety of life at sea. Fleets are responsible for ensuring that ships under their fleet comply with its requirements, and a number of certificates are prescribed in the Convention as proof that this has been done. Chapter 1 General Provisions includes regulation concerning the survey of the various types of ships, the issuance of documents signifying that ships meet the requirements of the Convention. Chapter 2 1 Construction, Substation and Stability Machinery and Electrical Installation deals with watertight integrity of the ship, especially for passenger vessels. Chapter 2 Fire Protection, Fire Detection and Fire Extinction. This chapter elaborates the means and measures for fire protection and accommodation cargo spaces in general for the passenger cargo and tanker ship. Chapter 3 Life-saving appliance and arrangement. Life-saving appliance and arrangement, including requirements for lifeboat, rescue boats, and life jacket according to type of ship. Specific technical requirements are given by International Life-saving Appliance List LSA code. Next, Chapter 4 Radio Communications. Global maritime distress and safety system requires passenger and cargo ships on international voyages to carry radio equipment, including satellite, and to improve the chances of rescue following an incident. Chapter 5 Safety of Navigation. This chapter deals with all the seagoing vessels of all sizes from boats to VLCCs and includes passage planning, navigation, distress signal. Chapter 6 Carriage of Cargoes. This chapter defines the storage and securing of different types of cargo and containers but does not include oil and gas cargo. Chapter 7 Carriage of Dangerous Goods. Defines the International Maritime Goods Code for storage and transportation of dangerous goods. Chapter 8 Nuclear Ships. The code of safety for nuclear power ship is stated in this chapter. Basic requirements for nuclear power ships and is particularly concerned with radiation hazards.
Chapter 9 Management for the Safe Operation of Ship. The chapter makes mandatory the International Safety Management (ISM) Code, which require a safety management system to be established by the ship owner or any person who has assumed responsibility for the ship, the company. Chapter 10 Safety Measure for High-Speed Craft. The chapter makes mandatory the International Code of Safety for High-Speed Craft, HSC Code. Chapter 11.1 Special Measure to Enhance Maritime. The chapter clarifies requirements relating to authorization of recognized organization responsible for carrying out survey and inspection on administration behalf, enhanced survey, ship identification number scheme, and port state control on operational requirements. Chapter 11.2 Special Measure to Enhance Maritime Security. Regulation 11.2/3 of the chapter enshrined the International Ship and Port Facility Security Code (ISPS) Code. Part A of the code is mandatory and Part B contains guidance as to how best to comply with the mandatory requirement. Regulation 11.2/8 confirms the role of the master in exercising his professional judgment over decisions necessary to maintain the security of the ship. It says he shall not be constrained by the company, the caterer, or any other person in this respect. Regulation 11.2/5 requires all ships to be provided with a ship security alert system. Regulation 11.2/6 covers requirements for port facilities, providing, among other things, for contracting government to ensure that port facility security assessments are carried out and that port facility security plans are developed, implemented, and reviewed in accordance with the ISPS code. Other regulations in this chapter cover the provision of information to IMO, the control of ships in port, including measures such as the delay, detention, restriction of operation, including movement within the port or expulsion of a ship from the port, and specific responsibilities of company. Chapter 12 Additional Safety Measure for Bulk Carriers. The chapter includes structural requirement for bulk carrier over 150 meters in length. Chapter 13 Verification of Compliance makes mandatory from 1 January 2016 the IMO member state audit scheme. Chapter 14 Safety Measures for Ship Operating in Polar Waters. The chapter makes mandatory from 1 January 2017
the introduction and Part 1A of the International Code for Ships Operating in Polar Waters, the Polar Code. That's all from us. Thank you for watching. Bye-bye.